Welcome to our second video of Into Design, where we're discussing Henry II, or shooting brake based on the Rolls-Royce Corniche. If you come around the corner, we have some nice photos of the finished article on screen here. But today we're going, as promised, to discuss a couple of the ideation sketches, the rough handmade sketches made with pen and paper and a bit of marker.
Yes.
We'll fly through them, touch on some of the details that are interesting to mention, and you'll see how we ended up eventually with this design here. Of course, in the first video we talked about these different graphical applications on the interior, very artistic in a way, not yet applied to a real car, but just to figure out which graphic would work nicely in the interior B-pillar backwards. And today we actually are applying that material, let's say, to sketches. So Tim will talk a little bit about what we have in front of us here.
Yeah, so there's a lot. So I can quickly point out some interesting ones. But if you notice, this is after we've done the abstract ideation, as Niels said. But doing some more interesting applications and see where our creativeness goes. Doing stuff with the ceiling.
Yeah, different headliner indeed.
Different headliners, different ways of having storage compartments in the sides, or putting bags in a certain way, or having shadows and volumes in a certain way.
Yeah, and even applying, these are fold-out benches. So there's a host of different ways of solving the graphics inside of a piece of car design, and a fold-out unit is also a graphic in a way, just like we discussed graphics in the previous videos. And talking about headliners and graphics and rear bench seats, you see some very radical different ideas here, all based on our research, but of course very outspoken here in this very early ideation stage. So what about having the same graphic outline on the floor in a carpet as we have on the ceiling in probably a leather? What about having a very radical way of moving towards that spirit of ecstasy with lines in that surface of the headliner, but also in the volumes of the back seat and the floor of the boot area, running from the sides all the way towards the rear of the backrest of the front seats.
So letting the creative juices flow and trying to come up with as many interesting design features and topics as possible.
Yeah. Including a sort of a roll-out carpet, which then also would be the bench seat. Eventually the bench seat was skipped. This is not something very unusual in car design. There's always a lot of different ideas that we think of, especially in the ideation stage. And then moving forward, you skip certain ideas because of a lot of focus within the project, or maybe even a budget, or a preference of a client, or an engineering challenge, yeah, or just because it's enough. We don't always have to add new ideas to a project to an extent that it's getting into a point where it's a bit of a useless idea, let's say, to keep on pushing. So you see the sketch ideas get a bit more grown up here. They are not as vague anymore, although we still have different ideas of, for instance, how the seats fold out, roll out, electrically adjustable perhaps. We even went into the possibilities of having heated seats as the picnic seat in the back. Fitted luggage that would be quite literally fitted to the car, to the sides of the car. Mm-hmm. And again, all these different graphics, and from rather extreme to a bit more mundane. And here you see something that could look a little bit like what we eventually applied. It's definitely not there yet, and it's too heavy and not necessarily overly elegant at this stage, but there is something there. Maybe interesting to touch on this as well, Tim, because of course this is the other graphic.
Yeah,
So we had
yeah,
two
for sure.
major graphics that we picked out of the very conceptual range of sketches,
Yeah.
and eventually two were picked, and this is one of them. Go ahead and
Yeah,
talk about that.
at this stage there was still work on two topics. This is one of them, where we try to implement it in an interesting way.
Yeah. We eventually skipped this because it was a bit too stiff, whereas
for sure.
Corniche is actually quite an elegant car. Interesting to touch on as well, asymmetry within car design. So this would be a graphical layout between slightly darker and slightly lighter tan leather interior, with one of the elements sliding out as that rear seat. So here a top view, including, so these are the two front seats, and the elements moving towards the spirit of ecstasy. So all the lines come from the bonnet and they move outwards. One of the ideas as well was to introduce a electric cargo cover, an idea that was skipped eventually, but it would roll alongside here and then into the bottom of the car, into the floor of the car, behind the rear seat. So this element here is the rear seat that would go up or down, and we were thinking about either rolling it towards the front or towards the back of that rear seat. And you'll see a few different iterations of these volumes in these sketches here, including how we would work with the wood and the existing wood panels that we try to take over from the car into the design work.
Yeah, at this stage we were already experimenting with solving some solutions in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
That's what you can see over here as well, because there are some very awkward packaging problems we had to solve. And over here you can see some close-ups, like maybe we can solve it this way, maybe we can solve it that way, and that eventually we ended up experimenting on the car for sure.
Yeah.
So that's what
packaging
you see here.
is, of course, where everything like in one car comes together. So where do the people go, where do the engineering elements go, like a fuel tank or a bike carrying system in our case. That's what packaging is. So we again went back and forth, this iterative process that is very typical for car design. These are these more angular graphics that, like I said, we eventually skipped, but we do keep experimenting with these. And as you can see, we experiment quite a bit with these different graphics and what we do with the three-dimensionality of a sketch. How can we make it more interesting? And we have to, of course, hide quite a few engineering elements, such as the struts, the two rear struts that do the damping for the rear wheels.
Yeah.
Here we come to a point where something can be seen, not literally, but there is some, let's say, match with what we eventually did. Layeredness, softness of line and volume, and the different color and materials coming together in this way, where the green, we didn't know it would be tweed at this stage, but the green is also an important color, but it's not a main color. So the beige is still the main color here. And you can also see here on the right hand side, we have one interior split in two halves, where we experiment with two different ways of applying graphics to the same interior, with that spirit of ecstasy up front, a new center stack as well, and some bright work, so luggage strips that become three-dimensional and run into the sides of the car, or actually into the upper side of the car in green. Some more ideas around that bench seat, how it would slide out, how it could fold up, do we have a hard backrest or a soft backrest, etc., etc. Of course, the top views with the graphics for the strips. And I'm flying through that just so you see how much we did.
But at this stage, we already made the decision on what shape language we wanted
To apply.
to apply.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, we designed bags as well. These are some of the bag designs that were designed in-house, and quite an interesting topic as well. However, we will dive into that a little bit later and a little bit further in more detail. However, it is nice, I think, to show you the consistency that we were after when it comes to the design of the interior, as well as the design of the bags, including all their details. How the bags would sit in the interior, sit on the strips. We actually thought of some magnets to go underneath the bag, so the strips and the bags would actually lock in place. And slowly but surely, you might see that we're coming closer to the final ideas. But for that, there is a lot of experiment. Even not at first glance, but if I show you in more detail, here none of the strips are straight. So they are all, only the one in the middle, but they're all curved towards the back. Culminating here in the seat as well, with a central strip in the seat. So, talking about these luggage strips, we think that's an interesting topic for next time.
Yeah.
We put quite a lot of effort in these as well. And for now, I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in to our second episode of Into Design. We're looking forward to sharing more on the interior of Henry II in the next video. See you then.